Hello, welcome to Tuesday with Toya. My name is Victoria Fragoso, also go by Toya. And today, hi Mr. Baveli. Today we have a show today about production. Mostly, I'm going to be having a guest, Amit M Amram, who is a producer in Seattle, to join us and talk a little bit about production. Today is a little bit of a different show. Hi everybody. It's because my household is pretty sick, so we're not going to be doing a performance today, but we are going to be having an awesome conversation. So if there's anybody that you want to invite to watch this live, there is a little arrow at the bottom. It kind of looks like a paper airplane, and maybe it's on the opposite side for you, I can't tell. But if you invite anybody you want to see this conversation, please do so now. If not, you can always send it after the live goes on my page. So yeah, all right, let's get started. I'm going to invite Amit to the live. Hello.
Hey.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, like this. Yeah. How you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Wait,
Good.
give me a second.
Yeah. So is this your
Okay.
first time doing Instagram Live?
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Yeah, not really a camera guy, but I'll try to do my best.
Sure. No, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. I think it's awesome because producers aren't really like the front face of many things.
hmm
But you are in your own studio, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Looks like a
My
cool
home
setup.
studio in Bellevue. Sorry. Yeah,
Bellevue. Okay, great.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, so basically, so just a little bit of background. So you're a producer in Seattle, but you are also a mixer and a songwriter. Um,
hmm
I actually first discovered you through Jeannie Rack because I had her on the show and I had interviewed her and saw a lot of the posts that she was making and sharing what you guys had created together. And I thought that was so special and so cool. I haven't really worked with a lot of producers myself. So just seeing the relationship that you guys had and the magic that you were creating with her music was really awesome.
Thank you.
So yeah, yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about yourself or what you've been up to, I guess?
Where do I start?
I know. So well, let me ask you a few questions. I mean, do you remember your first song that you wrote or when you started getting into music or songwriting?
Yeah, I think the first time I was like got into music was when someone brought like an acoustic guitar into like a friend's bonfire,
Oh,
and he taught
cool.
me how to play like what was that song? Smoke on the Water. Yeah.
Great
And I
song.
felt like yeah, great song. And I felt like I'm a rock star. I was like so hooked into it. And ever since I never left the guitar. I just taught myself to play guitar and slowly how to play piano and bass and drums. And 10 years later I kind of went into school for engineering, sound engineering, and kind of like decided that being a producer, that's like my role that I really want to do, what I enjoy the most. I didn't really like to be an artist. I don't like to be exposed in that way, as for not being on camera or on stage. But
Yeah.
yeah, I found that I'm performing best in studio, working on songs, working with people.
That's awesome. And there are all types of like musicians and ways to be creative and involved with music. So I'm really happy that
Oh,
you
for
found
sure.
like a place that is comfortable for you because I think a lot of people think you have to be an artist or you have to be the front or sometimes in the reverse that you always have to be in the background. So
I
yeah.
think I think the only thing you have to do, like there are many things to do, of course, in music, and we'll talk about that, but the only thing you have to do is focus, because this industry is very tough and it's very challenging and it's very saturated with so many people. So when you're trying
Mhm.
to do everything, that's like the highway to getting burnt out and just letting go, So I think the best way for anyone who wants to be involved in music professionally is just to decide what it is that I'm good and I can bring value, like as much as I want to, and then just going that route.
That's a
Yeah,
great point. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of trying to do it all, I think, and there are a lot of musicians these days who do try to do it all.
yeah,
So that's super important that you've noticed that, and that's really great advice. Um,
yeah.
and if so guitar was your first instrument, and then you kind of
Hmm.
learned that where you wanted to really be was production. What is your songwriting process like with an artist, or how do you start? I know Mr. Bob Bailey, thank you for submitting your question, but I mean, he was asking, what does pre-production look like for you and the artists that you work with?
So pre-production for me is one of the most important part of the way that is being shadowed by the production by many, many producers. And I think that that is the most important thing. Like when I work on a song, the first thing I want to know is where do we go, right? Like I can get you a
Mm,
Ferrari, right? But if I won't tell you where you need to go, it doesn't matter where you drive, right?
right.
Like the end goal and the vision should be the most important thing in every project. So like I'm working with a lot of artists, and some of them wants to, going through the artist's career path and building a fan base and go on tour. Some people just want a publishing deal. Some people want to have their music lines licensed to like TV or shows.
Hmm.
Some people just want to do it for fun, and everything is good. Everything is a good answer. There's no bad answer here. Me as a producer, I really want to know where do we go? What are we trying to do, right? So if you really want to go through that, I'll give you an example, right? Through that commercial pop route, and
Hmm.
having your music spread out to the millions per se, right? And then you have minute and a half guitar solo as an intro. Then my job as a producer is to be like, okay, let's have a conversation, you know?
Right.
And I know I'm a guitarist. I know how much fun it is, right? But if the final goal is to get here, we need
Yeah.
to let go of some stuff, and we need to make sure everything aligns to something. Or if you want to have your music um, played in like TV shows, so we need to
Hmm.
figure out what libraries do we want to look at, and what are they looking for, and how we can create value to them to create that connection, you know? So it's all about the
Yeah.
pre-production for me is all about understanding the journey of like where do we are, where do we want to go, and then connecting those dots in the production process.
That's a really
Yeah.
great point. I wonder, how do you find that most of your artists receive that feedback, especially if they're not sure, if they know that they want to do, like you said, something in the pop realm where there is a lot of competition, but they've got a 1 minute guitar solo at the beginning. I mean, how do your artists typically take that feedback, and like how does that learning process? How do you see their wheels turning as you're, giving them, educating, giving them this information?
Right. Right. So that's a great question, by the way. Ego is a big, big thing in the music industry, and a lot of musician has like a huge ego. And for me, that is something I kind of learned to let go of really early on. And it's important for me to understand who's the boss and who's trying. From when I work on a song, I'm not the boss, and even the artist is not the boss, right? The boss is the song,
Mm-hmm.
what the song needs, and we're here to make it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm also delivering it in a way of not like I'm not trying to be the one who control the process. I'm here to use my experience to make the best product possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm also delivering it in a way of like not just like this is what I think and you should listen to me. I know that at the bottom line, it's not my song, and it's not going to have my title on it as an
Mm-hmm.
artist. So at the bottom line, every decision is by the artist. Like if you want to listen to me, great. If not, that's great too. But we'll try to get the best result possible. Yeah.
That's great. I like what you said there. Yeah, the boss is the song. I mean, the song is
Oh
really
yeah.
directing so much in your sessions.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just like, what does it need? What is it feeling? What does it
Hmm.
want? Yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
great point. I love that.
Yeah. It's very easy to get caught up in like what you want to do, rather
Yeah.
than sometimes the song just tell you something else and you need to listen to it.
Hmm.
you know?
That's a great point. Yeah. Because some songs do need that 1 minute guitar solo. Like that's the
Some of
feeling
them
to
do.
it.
Some
Yeah.
of them do. Yeah, I can play a 10-minute guitar solo. I don't care. But if that's what you need, right?
Mhm.
If you're selling your song to a guitar company that does like an advertisement for the new guitar line that they're going to throw out next winter or something, right? So yeah, go for it. It's all about what you're trying to get.
Yeah. That
What's the
makes a lot of.
spotlight?
Hmm. And
Yeah.
with having your sessions, what other kind of things have you learned, or maybe like what's been some of the biggest surprises that you've had being in session with an artist and working on a song? Can you think of any like fun anecdotes that you were like you guys were surprised about where the song went, maybe, or what went into it?
Um, I mean, every session is a surprise. You always discover things you never thought you will. But
That's
give me an
awesome. That's
example.
true.
Like, yeah, give me an example of what do you mean?
Um, Like, have you ever worked on a song that you thought was maybe going to be like in one genre and then something else happened and it kind of maybe took the artist in a different route? Or, I mean, I guess a song
Oh,
that's
okay.
like taken over developmentally in
Yeah,
someone's
yeah,
career or something.
that's a great question. Early on, like those kind of things happened to me at the beginning when I first started producing.
Mhm.
Like for me, when I start working on a song, it's like it's a run against clock because our objective and freshness into the music is our number one asset when you're trying to work on something. Because the more you listen to something, the more you start to hate it. Like probably every musician knows that process.
Yeah.
You're writing something, and then it's like, oh my god, it's amazing, I love that. And
Hmm.
after a little bit, it's starting to be like, is it? Is it good? I don't know. And then you hate it, right? And then you
Yes.
leave it alone, and then you hear it again after a year, and you're like, okay, it's actually pretty cool. So that whole lifespan of a musical
Hmm.
creation, it's something that needs to be understood. It needs to be targeted in the process. So I'm always trying to get the initial response and the initial excitement as fast as possible, and to work
Hmm.
within that vibe, right? Because once we start into scattering ideas and gathering ideas, that's where you get lost. So in terms of genres, before I even start talking about that, right? Before, like in our first session, with every first session I do with artists, is always just listening to music. Like I want to know,
Hmm.
because when you give me your raw ideas, I can do a metal song out of it, and I can do a jazz song out of it, and I can make a pop
That's a
song
good
out of it.
point.
Like we can do everything. There are no
Hmm.
limits. You can do whatever you want. And so for me to understand what is the direction that you want to go, if you can't describe it, we'll just listen to music. We'll just learn each other. I think it's a between an artist and a producer, the most important thing is the relationship. It's the chemistry between
Yeah.
us. So I want to know what it is that you like. Why do you choose to do this now? Like I have like a bunch of questions that I ask
Yeah.
that I want to know exactly what are we doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome way, especially because music speaks so much. By listening to music and having that experience together, you learn like I mean, gut reactions are always going to be like, "Oh, wow, that was awesome," or "I really hated that."
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah. Because sometimes artists don't even know what they want. They know they want to have their song produced, but like, what do we do? I don't know. What's the process? How we can do it? How we can get it? How should it sound like? Especially if it's like
Hmm.
singer-songwriter who just wrote their song on acoustic guitar, and
Yeah,
then when you start to add elements like drums and beats or whatever, then it goes to a direction that wasn't exist before. So you
yeah.
have to kind of like focus on what it is that you want to go.
That's a really great tip. I mean, I can't tell you how many songs that I've had a hard time producing specifically because maybe I've had that song for so long and I've played it a certain way for so long that it's just ingrained. And so when you add those newer elements, like you're saying, like drums and things, you're like, oh, do I like that? I don't know. It's different now. And also another part of it is that you're producing it with somebody else or you're producing it and you're going to share it with other people. And so then that piece of yourself is no longer just yours, right? So it's out in the world for other people to
Yeah.
listen to, but a lot of times people will judge it, or some, hopefully they'll celebrate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I can understand
But
like that.
that's very important to understand. Some people are going to judge it and some people are going to hate it. That's okay.
Hmm.
I'm always
Yeah.
saying that. It's like people trying to like people think that they're going to drop the song or the EP or the album, whatever it is, and everyone's going to love it. Everyone's going to freak out. It's probably not going to happen. Some people are
Right.
going to hate it, and that's great. That's okay. It's fine. You don't need to
Yeah.
speak to everyone, right? Like when,
Yeah.
even when Rihanna drops a song, some people hate it. That's fine. You shouldn't
Yeah.
be aiming, you're just doing yourself a disservice. You're just stressing yourself out from something that shouldn't be exist.
That's a great
Yeah,
point, because I think a lot of times when you make something that's so like, I guess the word would be vanilla, but like something that is so basic that everybody can technically enjoy and nobody really
hmm
like hates, then you don't have all those people who like really love or can stand up for it in a certain way that someone else is
exactly.
going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you like that. And they're like, oh, I can't believe you didn't like it. What's, so
Exactly.
that's
Yeah, like
really cool.
when you
Yeah.
go deep, and you
Hmm.
really do authentic stuff, it really
Yeah.
speaks to a certain amount of people. And some people gonna love it, some people gonna hate it. That means you're doing your job. That means you're doing great. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great tip, because I don't think we've ever talked about that on this show, or I haven't really thought about that a whole lot. But yeah, that's an awesome
I
point.
know many people are so afraid of that cancellation, they're like, oh, nobody's
Yeah.
liking it. Nobody liked my
Hmm.
song. Well, it's okay, that's just part of the process, you
Right.
know?
And you never know,
Yeah.
like maybe it's just not the time for that song too. I mean, 5 years later, maybe it becomes more relevant to what people are going through. And so then that's where it really takes hold. And just keeping that in mind, I think, is like the nature of music and art in general. It has
hmm
that, it is like everlasting. It's going to continue to grow as people put meaning towards it. Um,
True. Very
so
true.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So any tips for finding a producer, or things to look for in a producer? Um, I think a lot of people, who do it themselves, obviously are going to be self-producing things. But if you're looking for a producer or somebody who can help you take your song to, I would say, probably a next level, because if you're self-producing it and you know how to do those things, then there's no reason that you would need to look for a producer. But I think a lot of times what I would think is that when people are looking for producers and artists are looking for them, they really need somebody who has those skills that they don't have in the production arena. So what would you say are like very important things to look out for?
Yeah, for sure. I think the number one thing is having chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, I'm not selling tomatoes, right? You don't come to me and you pay me and I give you your song and there you go and thank you so much and have a nice day. It's not. It's about relationship. We're building a relationship, and when you're trying to look for a right producer, it's mostly about finding someone who can understand what you want and can deliver what you need. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when I start working on a project, I'm trying to figure out what are the missing pieces in their puzzle, right? Like, let's say
Mm-hmm.
your music career is a puzzle and you have great songs, but you don't have great production. You have great production, but you don't have great recording. You have great recordings, but you don't have great promotion. So I'm trying to figure out
Yeah.
what it is that you need to complete the whole picture. And that's where I'm trying to put my skills and my experience into it.
That's awesome. So yeah, just trying to fit that puzzle and make it something that everybody's proud of, right? Because you want to be proud of working with it, and the artist wants to be proud of their song afterwards. So
Of course.
that definitely, I
Yeah,
think,
like
comes
a
from,
lot of people
yeah.
a lot of people look mostly in like, credits, like yeah, he worked with some big name
Mm,
artist or something, and that doesn't really do much. It only means that you're gonna pay much more than you should. If you're working with someone who produced Bruno Mars, he's probably gonna
right.
charge way more than what you're comfortable with. And he's probably
That makes
not.
sense.
You always need to think about the value that they can bring you besides of their credits. So beside of what they've done as producers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, because yeah, you hired that amazing producer that did all these Bruno Mars songs and you're paying them a buttload of money, but then you don't have a relationship where you feel like your song is even like growing in
Yeah.
any capacity. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
waste of time. Yeah.
It's the same
Um,
thing like signing with the label. So if you
mm,
sign to a big label, right? Let's say you're an artist that has 3 songs out and performs once a month in a local bar, and then Sony wants to sign you, right? So probably that deal is not going to be very good for you. Probably that deal is going to, because they don't get any value in return from you. They take a lot of risk on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they're probably
Mm-hmm.
going to give you a pretty bad deal that if you're going to succeed, we're going to take 90% of your earnings, right? So
Wow.
you
That seems
always need
fair.
to, yeah, you always need to think about the value that you can bring each other, right? And if you feel like they're like way ahead of you and you have no chance, the only thing you can give them is money, you know?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how it is.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you say that because I see both sides of the spectrum, like a lot of artists who are very willing to give whatever they can and put whatever they can towards their money, but they're not thinking maybe in terms of like that value that you're talking about. What are they actually
Mm-hmm.
getting for their money? They just know that they're paying a lot of money, so it must be good. And then there's the other artists who are mostly do it yourself, don't want to pay for anything. And so just trying to do everything that they can. But like you said, if there's a missing puzzle piece, then there's only so much that you can that a success that you're going to achieve if you don't have all of those pieces of the puzzle. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah, very true. You need to, part of doing it, it's also understanding what are your weaknesses, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We're not all the best at everything. You can't, you
No.
know? You gotta
Impossible.
highlight those best qualities and let someone
Mm-hmm.
else do the things that you're not doing as good. You know, like I pay people all the time to do stuff I don't do, you know?
Right? Yeah, graphic
So,
design, like there's just so many
yeah,
things
I
that
don't know how to do
goes
that.
into
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
But I do think I want to add to that. I do think that people who self-produce, or not only self-produce, people who like do some kind of demos with like Ableton or fuck around with some DAWs or something. I think that's great because it really gives them more information and it
Yeah.
develops their language of production. So when they do
Mm-hmm.
work with a producer eventually, it's much easier. It's much easier and it's smoother and it's just more fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point because then you have this a little bit of common knowledge to say this is
Hmm.
what I want. Maybe I tried it this way, but it didn't work for me. How do you do something like this? Because
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, music is such a big language, especially when you bring in production into that language. We're not just talking about notes and chords anymore. You know, we're
Hmm.
talking about drops and tempos and things like that. So it's just um, a lot of ways, I guess, to find miscommunication, but a lot of ways to make something pretty extraordinary if you are speaking the same language. Um, and when it comes to self producers, I mean, what kind of tips do you have for people who are self producing their music?
Um, the best thing I can think of is understanding who you are at every moment, right? Because when you do everything yourself, you need to understand when you're a songwriter, when you're the artist, when you're the producer, when you're the
Mm-hmm.
arranger, when are you the mixer. Because when you do everything yourself, everything kind of like gets crashed
Yeah.
together and masked, and it creates a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainties. So
Yeah.
when you work on the song as a songwriter, forget about the mix, forget about the arrangement. That's what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing right now. You want to
Right.
work on that, forget about the song, work on about the production. You know, it is hard, but if you're doing it all, that's the best way, in my opinion, to really manage your time and your focus.
That's a
Yeah,
really great point. And you brought up focus earlier too. So yeah, by focusing on the specific hats that you're wearing and not trying to wear all of those hats at one time, I think, yeah, that's a really great point. And to not
hmm,
confusing yourself or making it a mess. You're actually
yeah,
segmenting everything so you can handle it in that
yeah,
order.
yeah.
That's pretty
It's
cool.
very important to understand the process of it, and when you do it, when you work on one thing, forget about the rest. It's just going to confuse you.
Yeah, that's a
You
good
have some
point.
crazy ideas or something, write them down, you get them later. Yeah.
Yeah, do you write a lot of notes? Save for
Oh
later.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have like a whole shelf of notebooks.
Oh, that's awesome. My sister does that
Yeah.
too. She's just notes, 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 notes. But yeah, I think
I
what
like the writing. Yeah. I like the
yeah,
writing.
Physical
Hmm.
writing. I feel like that's something with technology these days, right? We do a lot of everything on our computers and our phones. Um,
Hmm.
but when you get into that manual process, do you mostly, when you're producing with an artist, do you write your songs like mostly acoustically, or do you open up a DAW and like start production at the same time? What's your method of madness? I mean, what do you feel like is the best way to do that?
There's no one best way. It's really depends and it varies by the song.
Hmm.
Um, I do have some kind of pattern that I go by. Like I'm always trying to, whenever I work on a new song, I want to hear it raw, at like the
Hmm.
rawest condition, just played with acoustic guitar. And I want to hear it like twice or three times just to figure it out. And I'm looking for that one thing that catches me, the hook,
Hmm.
that
Okay.
one thing that I want to highlight. And from there, and during that session is after we discussed about the pre-production and where do we want to go and everything, right?
Hmm.
So I'm trying to find that one thing that really grabbed my attention and
Hmm.
put my focus on that. And then I'm looking at what the song needs. You do have a cool intro? Is the intro good enough? Is the outro good enough? Is it long? Is it short? Is the structure is interesting? Because you need to always think about how to keep the listener engagement throughout the whole song, throughout the whole
Hmm.
process. Like you can't go 4 bars without anything changing. You always have to
Yeah.
add just one more thing, or to make the chorus just a little bit bigger. So we always need to think about the structure of the song, and we do try to change tempos or keys sometimes, just to
Hmm.
make sure we're on the song gets the right energy that it should have.
That's great. That's a really great tip too, because sometimes you're so set on the way that you think it should be. If you don't try other things like changing the tempo or changing the key, you're not going to know what you might be missing.
Hey,
So
sometimes you just take it one step
yeah,
and it's a totally different song. And it's like
that's really
it
cool.
creates a whole new stream of energy that you never thought existed. Yeah.
Yeah,
Try it.
that's awesome. I know. I'm gonna try it now. I think we tried a tempo change or no, a key change on one of my songs, and at first I loved it, and then I was like, huh, no, take it back. So I think it always just depends on
Yeah.
yeah, what your focus is, what you really want to achieve, and if you haven't thought enough about it, you might find yourself changing your mind later. Um,
Hmm.
but that's why it's so important, like you said, to focus and figure those things out first, and then save everything else that you need to save for later. Yeah,
Exactly. Write it down, let it go. Yeah,
don't let it go. I love it.
exactly.
And then Mr. Bob Bailey had another question. It was a little technical for me. So what is Cubase? It's a
Cubase is a
DAW.
DAW. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Just like Pro Tools and Ableton and all the rest. I use Cubase because I've been using it for 15 years. And
Oh, okay.
I think the best DAW is the one that you know how to use. That's it.
That's great.
You're not gonna find me fight about what's the best DAW. I do love Cubase and I think it's a great DAW. It has a
Mm-hmm.
lot of options and you can really go in depth with the software.
Mm-hmm.
But, you should use whatever you use and that's it. Yeah. Those are
I
your
love it.
tools. Those
Yeah.
are your tools. Yeah.
That's a really great point too, because I'm always of the opinion. Or one time I took a mastering class online, and one of the points that they made was there was an artist who continued to work with the same producer and the same engineer for mastering every single time for years and for years and for years. And the reason why he chose to do this was because it wasn't just like that he was comfortable. It was that they were all growing together and they were all learning together. And so instead of trying to switch everything up for like the latest, newest producer, like hottest producer out there and a newest DAW and the best new technology, he really focused on learning his tools and growing his skills
Hmm.
with those tools. So I think that was a big
Yeah.
eye opener for me, thinking that, oh,
That
well,
that's a great point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a great point towards gear, equipment, and also people. You don't
mm-hmm,
just toss around people and you're like, okay, I'm
yeah,
gonna work with this, so now I'm gonna do this, and he's bigger than me, so I can. It's all about building together and growing together.
yeah, yeah.
Especially in the music industry, everyone knows everyone, and
Yeah, it's such a big community, but it's so small. And the connections that
yeah,
you find yourself making, it's like very magical and very cool because it's like, oh, I know you, or I've heard of you
yeah,
before. I've heard your music. And I think that's always just like a wonderful surprise to realize how,
kind of intimate you already are, because music is
Hmm.
so emotional and so connecting. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
that's very cool. What kind
It's
of
very cool.
we are wrapping up now, but what kind of projects are you really excited for? What do you have like coming up around the bend? I noticed
Um,
Jeannie's EP is coming out, and you have a lot of other work that you've been working on too that looks awesome. But yeah, if you want to tell us a little bit more.
yeah, so Genie's EP is gonna drop in May. So I don't remember the date, but yeah, that EP is gonna be amazing. Like we put so much work into it, and it's so versatile, and I love
Cool.
it. It's a great EP, and Genie's one of the best singers around. So
She's
um,
incredible. Yeah.
yeah, I have an EP coming out May 20th with Bovian, which is
Cool.
like yeah, he's a New York artist, but he
Oh,
also
neat.
lives. He used to live in Seattle, but he lives in New York now. That it's like all over the place. Like that album is gonna be crazy.
I love it.
Let's see. Erica Cooper is gonna drop two new singles that we work on together. There's a new artist I'm working with, John Vaughn. Really pop,
Mm-hmm.
really fun. Um, Jesse Galloway. Love that dude. Everything he makes is amazing. Um, hope I'm not forgetting anyone.
It's okay if you are. You'll. I know it's
I
really
love you
hard,
all
like
if
on
I
the
forget.
spot.
Yeah. Right. You're just like, oh, and
It's
thanks
like
my
when
mom
you're,
and dad.
yeah. It's like, who did I forget? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And so where are you most active on social media, or where can people reach out to you if they want to work on a project with you? Do you prefer Instagram, social media, or do you prefer emails? What's your thing?
I think Facebook and Instagram is
Okay.
where I'm mostly active, trying to be active.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and you can also check out my website at amitsounds.com. Um,
AMITSONDS.com. Oh my
SOUND.
gosh. Yeah.
Sound. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Um,
Yay.
yeah, so that's where you can hear my stuff and see my story. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we are coming to a close. Thank you so much, everybody who's been watching. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you, Amit, for your incredible insights. I
Thank you
learned
for
so
having
much.
me. Yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate it. It was
that's a
fun.
lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll be sure to post your stuff in my story so that people can find you if they're and I will correct my misspelling, because I do know how to spell sound. So I'll put that in my stories too. And I'm always correcting people on their spelling. So for me to make that mistake, it feels a little silly.
How
That's
could
okay.
you?
Well, awesome talking to you. And I will be, for everybody who's listening and watching, I'm going to be doing these actually weekly from now on. So I'll be back next Tuesday at 5 p.m. as well. And next time we will have live music. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And I hope y'all have a great rest of your week. Thank you, Amit.
Thank you. Bye bye.